how do you feel about how that's trending? Are the resources sufficient to make that a reality? How much progress can you tell is ongoing there now to hit that at the end of the academic year?
It's early for us. We're always nervous to kind of call it out this early, but I mean, I think
Our teachers are working really hard
Yeah.
to meet the needs of our students. We, have looked at numbers and tried to put resources that we currently have, staffing, in the right places. The WIDA Access for ELS test will be given in March, and so it comes back. It's going to be online this year, which will allow us to get the results back a lot quicker as long as it works okay. But we anticipate that, we can continue to maintain. I know that the staff is working really hard. Not only the specialists, but the classroom teachers are working hard to meet the needs of the students. So we're confident, hopefully, confident that, the students will continue to make progress.
And we had great success the last 2 years, and so there's no reason for us to think that we're not going to have that success again this year.
Mm-hmm. And teachers keep data on students throughout the year to see if there's areas that they need to work on and focus on. And they try new programs. If something isn't working for the students, then they find another strategy to address the deficits or areas that the students are struggling in.
And I might just add, too, I know we've talked about this during the budget, but it probably hits high school more than any level. When you have a student who moves in and it's credit bearing and they're trying to get them to graduate in 4 years and they come as a freshman and they do not speak English, there's a tremendous amount of work that has to be done. And, I really give the credit, to our high school for their RTI process, and what they have at the high school level does not exist at high schools around the country. They really get around the table. They're talking about kids on an individual level. And give you an example, Mr. Bird reached out, I think it was last Thursday. He has 3 students that he needs, an individual tutor for. And so, it's personalizing for those students what is it that they need in order to be able to help them be successful. And they really do look at kids on an individual level. And so, I think they're going to have the same success, if not more so, simply because we keep getting better at it, I think, every year, really drilling down for each child.
Thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Gill?
On the ESOL point, do we also provide support for parents? Or like the parent university or workshops, do we provide those kind of things for parents, help them navigate the system?
Yes, we've had we have special back to school nights, usually prior to the back to school night with all parents. Usually there's an ESOL session before. We've had a high school, middle school parent session on a Saturday, and tomorrow night, I believe the TJ ESOL technology night is happening. So we have done more this year than we have in previous years, and we feel it's beneficial. One of the things that we're doing is at our administrative meeting tomorrow, we will be looking at a program called Language Line that will allow parents who speak a different language to call into our office, and for our secretaries or our teachers to be able to call in a number so that we can make sure we can communicate with the parents, because that was one of the concerns that we heard last year when we had our event out in the park, is that sometimes when they call in, they're not able to get the information that they need, whether they're saying they're going to pick their child up early or someone's sick or have a question about homework. So we're looking to make sure that we can communicate, not just our teachers, but our office staff as well.
Thank you. Any other questions about the work plan? Dr. Jones, you mentioned the 3 students at George Mason. Are there any other areas where you feel there is a misalignment of resources? Do you feel you pretty much have what you need to get the job done?
I think we do have what we need to get the job done for our children. And I think we do. It's hard, but we've done a good job also of shifting resources. And that's something that's been new for us, and that's not an easy thing to do. But, Lisa really keeps a finger on the pulse, because if your 5th graders move to 6th grade and you happen to have a huge number of children that move to middle school and vacate the elementary, you may need to move a 0.5 half-time staff member or in another direction. And so I think we've done a really good job of utilizing the resources that we have and making sure they're in the right spots.
All right, excellent.
Is there potentially, I don't want to call it backup, but is there flexibility in when you say you've got resources? I mean, do you have some capacity that could be moved at short notice to help either from, say, the middle school ESOL to the high school? In this case where you mentioned that the principal at the high school was asking for support for 3
Yeah, it all depends. Because we individualize, it depends what they're really asking for. If you need a one-on-one tutor for a student, it needs to be when the student can meet, what's the best time, and it may just be somebody that comes every day during Mustang block, and that's all they do. That's all they're contracted to do. They're not on staff with us permanently. So the high school really looks at what is it that this child needs. If it's a para, and as a matter of fact, I think it was this year we moved a para from one building to the high school because our ESOL students who were out in the regular environment, we needed another para assistance. So we look at that every year. Now, if it's the middle of the year and we have 10 level 1 students move in, then we're going to have to add staff, and we have to figure out how to get that done. But luckily, in ESOL, that tends to not happen as often as it does in special education, and it's usually in September, where Liz is coming and saying, I need 3 paras because we have 3 students who have just moved in the school division that need a one-on-one person with them all day. It's usually special education where we see that challenge. And I think of even just some cases we've had over the last couple of years where, we don't have, because we're so small, we don't have a teacher for the blind. We don't have, on staff all the time, we don't have a hearing impaired teacher. So if one student moves in, we have to get resources in place immediately, whether that's September or January, which can mean hiring 1 or 2 staff members.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Right, any more questions? All right, let's go on then to item 7 now, .05, Milestone Communications Cell Tower Agreement.
This is on the agenda tonight just as not a deep dive, just as a kind of a preview for you of what's coming. Back in 2011, we had all 7 of our board members were different than they are today. And that's when the lease was actually signed for this cell tower, and Milestone is the company that actually oversees that. And you've probably heard about the cell towers that will be put in school divisions around Virginia, because it does generate revenue for the school division. Well, during 2011-12, the school board at the time thought that we would be getting a tower on George Mason campus, and it just never came to fruition where the cell providers weren't really needing a tower in that location. So we kept checking in with them kind of every year, and actually Mr. Sharp was one that would always say, have you checked, have you checked? And we just didn't have, they just were not prepared to put a tower on our property. So they have reached out very recently, and they will be on our agenda on the 23rd, and I've expressed to them that we have a brand new school board, that all 7 members are different, that although the school board signed the lease back in 2011 and it is a 10-year, that gives them the option to be looking for a cell tower for us, that this school board will have a lot of questions. And basically with the cell tower, what they're looking for, it would be a cell tower that would be located, for instance, somewhere by Metro 66 area of the main campus. The base of the cell tower is about 50 by 50. And that cell tower, once they install it, they do community outreach and that sort of thing, but while it's going in, if the school board decided to go in that direction, once it takes about a year to actually get the cell tower in, then you get an annual payment, and this is approximate, again, they'll be here on the 23rd, but it's about $35,000 a year lease over 30 years, plus for every provider that is tagged into that tower, and they take up to 4, you get X amount of percentage off of that. So your annual revenue could be anywhere from $45,000 to $70,000 a year that's just coming in to help with operational expenses. And the school board in 2011 felt that it was a great opportunity, especially where our property is, because it's not right next to everybody's house. And generally, when schools really have trouble with these, it's when they're trying to put them like in the middle of like TJ neighborhood. Nobody wants them. But again, this will be a decision our school board will have to, be thoughtful about and listen and weigh in when Milestone is here. And it is something that they generally will want to move fairly quick on. So I wanted you to have the full lease so that between now and the 23rd, you can read the lease, see what was originally signed, do a little bit of research on Milestone, and you'll find other school districts where they are generating revenue right now. And if you have questions before they get here, send those to me so I can get them to Milestone so they can come as prepared as possible. They do have multiple sites that they look at, so it's not something where you can sit on it for a year or two kind of making up your mind. So that basically is milestone kind of overview, and they'll be here at the end of the month to bring everybody up to speed, and then the school board will be able to make those decisions on it, whether it's something you're interested in. This school board is interested in this or not.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Any questions?
Milestone Communications. That's actually it's the same thing. But Milestone actually handles the contract. The lease is with the people that come. And again, this is not my expertise area. I'm just sharing kind of what I know. That poll people are the ones that come and actually physically put the poll in, and that's who the lease is with. Milestone handles all the overview, the contract, and everything with them.
Okay,
Dr.
thank you.
Jones, I'm not quite sure just about the envelope. Is this, it would be under the existing lease, or it would be a new lease?
Well, we have an existing lease, so we don't need to sign a new lease, but the lease really gives them, says the school board was committed that we would consider a cell tower. The next step is where we would have to actually agree, though, to a tower in a particular location for X amount of dollars. So it would be like round 2, but we don't have to go back and do step 1 again.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is construction update, item 7.06.
On the construction update, we did have a Mount Daniel update that went out, all my days are running together, last Friday, and it was fairly detailed. Worked with the city trying to make sure we had the right number in there on what had been paid down on the bond. So if you haven't read that information, there's a lot of good information in there. Right now, we're working on trying to get the date for 2232. And once we have that date, we will let the community know when that will be, where we will get a yes or a no. In between that, Mr. Lawrence and I will be at a homeowners meeting with the Mount Daniel folks next week. And it's like 15 minutes, kind of the same meetings that we used to do. It's not a public meeting, so to speak. It's actually just their homeowners association where they have invited us to stop by. And so that's where we are in Mount Daniel right now. We don't have our date yet. Once we get that, we will let the public know. The other date is the George Mason MEH joint meeting. The next joint meeting was just set today, and that will be on Monday, the 22nd. At 8:30. It's a late start, and it is a closed meeting where we will have all of our consultants here as well.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Any questions? All right, now we come to item 8.01, future agenda items. This is where we have the opportunity for board members individually to suggest items that they would like to have discussed in future work sessions, and if there's if the temperature of the board is such that there is sufficient interest to put that on, we will then add that to the list of items for future agendas. Anybody have any future agenda items at this time?
I'd like to explore the high C
Hybrid learning.
content classes versus the regular in-class, because we heard from teachers and also from the community that, they're not sure how much value the high Cs offer versus having a regular class with a regular teacher. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about the content. I mean, some of the teachers did complain that they didn't think the high Cs constituted a full class. They'd rather, basically they didn't think the students would get as much out of a PC learning environment only than if they had a teacher walk them through a curriculum throughout the semester. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about the high C offerings, what's in there. I've personally experienced it with my second daughter, and so I'd like to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and we can certainly have the whole high C team. I would say between last year and this year, that it's just, it's exploded, and it's probably 10 times better than it was back in 2011, 2012, simply because the high C staff are part of the English department, part of the science department, and so they actually use the same curriculum, they use the same content, they actually follow each other, and we have face-to-face teachers in our content areas. Instead of trying to use our teacher that we used to be face-to-face teacher, trying to pick up a high C class, we have our high C teachers who are also face-to-face as well. So we can have them come and do a session for you and be able to talk about content and how it's developed and built.
And we did last
It was really good,
last
actually.
year had a presentation. I certainly hear where you are coming from, and I have shared your pain on that. I think it is trending upwards. I think we have 2 new board members who were not there for that. So I assume that you all would be receptive to something like that? Yep, okay. So yes, let's do that. Any other items people would like to have discussed? Mr. Redding?